Okay, so just a couple of notes, guys, for today before we start. So about the talk, the same intro as on the meetup invite. So today, Kristy Theissling will basically reflect on learnings from the SAFe Summit Global 2021. Insights played from practitioners around the world. I'm not quite sure if you have attended any of the summits this year. It was also remote, so you can watch the sessions, and Kristy will show us a couple of things at the end. And it basically is, these guys come from all sorts of industries, such as weapon making, defense, gambling, telco, automotive. So SAFe has now spread across a lot of different industry because it pretty much covers anything a company could do, and just moving them to agile ways of working. Also, she will conduct a facilitated crystal ball session at the end with the audience and practitioners in the room. And idea is to pick up the trends upcoming in Australian industries, inspired by our collective experience on the ground, and in the rest of the world, which aims to support each other as agile practitioners in the knowledge they need to position their organization to thrive in the next year and beyond. So Kristy is an independent contractor, passionate about efficient systems at scale. She holds accreditations, a bunch of them. So main one, SPC, but also SAFe Agilists, Scrum Master from the CSM, and Agile Product Owner, ICP-APO. That's also a tough one. And is an Australian TAE compliant trainer. She's regular conference speaker, including Lean Agile Systems Thinking Conference in Brisbane 2019, Asia Pacific Agile Coaches International Conference as Best Practices Coach in 2020, Agile Women's Events for 2020, and announced speaker at the Australian AUS Agile, Australia's National Agile Conference for 2020 at Pulmer Park in Melbourne. Had it not been unfortunately cancelled because of COVID, that was, a shame. But hey, new conferences are coming, so we should be fine. Before we begin, at the start, we'll have Rob Howard, the VP for Asia Pacific from Scaled Agile Inc. He was kindly offered to give us an update on the latest SAFe initiative in APAC. Note the meetup is being recorded, and it'll post it on YouTube. Please stay on mute during the presentation, and there will be the crystal ball in the Q&A time after the presentation. During the presentation, please feel to post your questions in the chat box, and we'll monitor the chat box and see how far through the questions we can go through. As always, the meeting usually stretches past the end of the hour, so we may have to have a couple of minutes more. We will address as many as we can, and before we begin, any questions, anything else? Any other questions before we begin? Cool. If not, Rob, thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to tell us what's new in APAC.
Thanks, Mihail. Yeah, just wanted to give Rob Howard, Asia Pac VP at Scaled Agile. Just wanted to give everybody a quick update on what's been happening in the region without stealing any of Kristy's thunder, and then leave the Q&A session at the end for her so that everybody can focus on what she's been talking about. So look, pretty exciting times at Scaled Agile. The Australian number of learners taking on SAFe has grown by about 65% this year. So really incredible growth, and to support that growth, we've been hiring people. So you'll see a lady named Belinda Enger on the call. So Belle started with us recently, and she's going to be our customer engagement specialist, as we call them. But basically her role is to support all of our customers and partners with whatever it might be that they need from a Scaled Agile perspective in Australia and New Zealand. So it's really exciting to welcome Belle to the team. And we've hired an Australian New Zealand country manager who will start in early January. So they'll be responsible for, being the front person for the Australian New Zealand operation, and again, supporting everybody to be successful with SAFe. There are a couple of other things that I just wanted to mention. One is a thing called SAFe Enterprise, which you may have heard of. It's our licensing platform for the consumption of SAFe licenses. Plus, it gives you access to all of the systems, tools, and resources at the back end to help be successful with your SAFe practice. and it makes incredible economic sense. So typically the licenses are $100 for a 2-day class or $495 for a 3-day class. With SAFe Enterprise, you get access to all of the courseware, plus all of those systems at the back end for $140 per learner with a minimum of 100 learners. That's a lot of data to take in straight off the bat, but the key takeaway is that it makes incredible economic sense. So if anybody's interested in SAFe Enterprise, plus it includes all of your renewals, so all of your certifications / membership renewals. So yeah, if you're interested in exploring SAFe Enterprise any further, just drop me a line after this and we can have a chat about it. The other thing I wanted to offer up is the enhancements that we've made to the measure and grow assessments. So we've now included the business agility assessment on top of the 7 core competencies assessments that you might have seen before. So they're a great tool to be able to measure how you're tracking against your objectives in terms of your progress towards something resembling business agility, but B, helping you understand where the gaps might be relative to your goals from the 7 core competencies perspective or business agility overall. Plus it measures your progress against industry data. So we collaborate, we'll bring together all of that in a really simple to use assessment tool from either comparative agility or agility health. Really useful to run at the start of your journey with SAFe as well, so that you can map out where your objectives might need to land, and you can measure your progress against those as you go. So that's available on the community platform now, and also available in SAFe Enterprise. So yeah, if you've got any questions around SAFe Enterprise or any of the measure and grow stuff, just drop me a line after this. And it's rob.howard@scaledagile.com, and we can have a conversation about it. And that's it, Mahal. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rob. That's superb news. And again, thank you very much for coming over to give us that news. Yes, I'm looking at how to stop the beeping sound when someone joined. I know Kristy loves it, but looks like it's getting in the way now. So I will. You can ping me on the chat exactly if you know, but I will search and disable it. So with that, Kristy, I think it's all yours now.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Oh, good. Thank you all for coming. I can see an enormous list of names on the right-hand side. Some of them I know and a lot of them I don't. So thank you so much for coming along. Can I get a hands up or a yell if you are not calling in from Australia?
Yep.
Ooh. And who? Oh, there's a few. 4.
Yep.
Nice. 5. And whereabouts, just quickly, are you calling from for the people that aren't?
Atlanta, Georgia.
I'm calling in from Dallas, Texas.
Oh, hello. Hello, Texas.
I'm from Toronto.
Toronto, welcome.
There's a couple of us here from Auckland, New Zealand.
Colorado.
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 Mm-hmm.
Chicago.
Chicago. Big. Oh my gosh. Well, that is quite international audience. Wow. And if I'm accurate, it's not necessarily an appropriate time to be awake right now for some of those places. So thank you so much for coming. It is lunchtime here in Sydney, Australia, and we're very, very happy to have you. So thank you so much.
It is last night here in Colorado.
It is last night. Time traveling. I love that. Thank you so much. I'm really humbled by that introduction to Mahal. So thank you. I forget those things, and yeah, it's wonderful and humbling to hear. And Rob, thank you for the intro. Really good to hear what we're up to here with Scaled Agile in APAC and the growth that we're seeing. So thank you so much. Today, what I'd like to talk about is a little bit about my journey in the last 4 or 5 months. And as a way of talking through that, I'd like to discuss some of the things that I've seen in Scaled Agile and in SAFe through some exposure that I've had now around the world. So that's been really lovely. At any time, feel free to pop a question in the chat box or any thoughts or insights. So the first part of the session, I'd like to recap on what's been happening in, I guess, in my world as an independent contractor and an Agilist in the last few months. And then move through some of the learnings and some of the things that I saw internationally, and some of the market conditions that currently exist in Australia, but the world very, very welcome to hear, and would love to hear those. And then lastly, look at some themes and how we can prepare ourselves as Agilists and as practitioners in the next couple of years. And then we'll be over to questions. So yeah. So I'll kick off. So my name's Kristy Theissling. I'm an independent contractor. I come from a background in consulting, a fantastic consulting group here in Australia called Elaborate. And I can see a couple of people from Elaborate in the room. So thank you. I'm a massive fan of their work. And while I was working with Elaborate, I was able to be exposed to some really fantastic Agile executions. And one of the frameworks that I was able to be introduced to there was SAFe. And I did complete my initial SAFe training with Elaborate as well. So great to have them in the room. And they're part of my story today. Yeah, so I guess just in a nutshell, my background as an Agile coach, I've been coaching or working in Agile settings for about 4 or 5 years. Prior to that, I've worked in tech since I was about 20, and I'm about to turn 38. So yeah, I've worked across different technology spaces. I guess though more important, I think, is I'm passionate and dedicated to efficient systems, any efficient systems, whether it be my worm farm, which are extremely efficient, or whether it be different approaches to finance, personal finance, or anything at all. So what I've really come to learn about myself as a professional is what I really like is structure, models, and frameworks. And that's how I fell in as a passionate Agile consultant a number of years ago. And I guess, as we all know in this room, Agile is an umbrella and it's a mindset, and underneath that is a number of frameworks, and SAFe is one of those. So to fast forward, in July this year, Sydney was thrown into lockdown. I hate lockdown. I think everybody hates lockdown. You can throw your hand up if you like it, but okay, or if you don't, that's good too. So it frustrates me because I'm a people person, and I like to be in front of lots of people. So my groceries often come when I'm in public speaking engagements, which just kind of happens. I'm going to hit pause for 1 minute. Would anybody like to jump in with a question while I quickly buzz that? Rob, you go first.
Well, we've talked about where everybody's from, so maybe we could talk about what the Aussies are having for lunch, or the Kiwis are having for lunch. Oh, she's back. You don't have to answer. That's perfect.
That's good. Thank you. So coming back to, so 4 months ago, we were thrown into lockdown. What happens next? We're at home. I was on contract at that time. And after spending a wonderful few months prior, surrounded by people, which is what I love to do, stuck in this very apartment with 2 small children. And I made a decision to roll off my contract and explore other things. And I did that because, I guess, of a frustration and yeah, realizing that I need stimulation intellectually and in other ways outside of an apartment. And then I started to ask myself a question: how can I really push the boundaries and really use this time to open up anything that I hadn't explored yet? When I did complete my SPC, which was only this year, I think it was in June, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of my trainers or one of my trainers is in this call, something happened. It's the SPC 5.1, and we got to maybe day 4, and I was filled with excitement because I saw something in that training that just made me go, wow. And it was participatory budgeting. It was the first time I'd seen that in the SAFe in the SAFe role, in that version. And I thought to myself, gee, that's cool. Because of a couple of reasons. One is because I love models and frameworks, The second was because just this year I had completed micro and macroeconomics at the University of New South Wales. And I do that for fun because I enjoy models and frameworks. And what I like about them is applying them at scale in different settings. And as an example, in my last, in a contract earlier this year, I took the supply and demand model from economics and then applied that into our chapter model and then looked at, okay, how can we use the supply and demand model to help get the right skills in the right places and the right teams, so that sort of thing. So when I saw participatory budgeting, it just made me go, wow, that's really cool. And then I started having a look, little Google, and I found this place, which I know, and that is Boulder in Colorado, and that is the home of SAFe, or where the main office is. And it sounds like there's a few of you here from Colorado today, so I do wonder whether you're from Boulder. So big hello if you are. And I thought to myself, what do I do now? And I managed to meet Rob here, and then start to become aware of what's happening with SAFe at a global level. When I was doing my SPC training, I was quite inspired because of the scale and the potential that I could see for the models to go across larger organizations. And there's something inside me that drives me to make a change and to have an impact on a large level at scale. So an example of that is I enjoy working in the social justice area, or in an area where the work that we're doing in the day-to-day, in the Agile setting, delivering the product, impacts and influences change on a big level, as big as I can get. And there's like this little hunger, like a little dopamine hit that takes me in that direction. So yeah, I was curious about what else is out there? What else is out there? And this insatiable thirst. And my trainer in my SPC 5.1 I said to him, what's the biggest thing that it can do? And he said, well, in Australia, it's something like, and he listed a telco. I was like, oh, a telco, that's a bit dry. And I thought to myself, oh, what else can we do with SAFe? And then it started me on this journey of starting to have a look around. So I rolled off my contract and I had some time, and I just started to make phone calls, make connections, start to network, follow my curiosity. Where will it take me next? And I discovered this enormous arena of where Scaled Agile could be applied that I hadn't even considered before. And I think that's because I live here in Sydney, in Australia, and I've worked, up and down the East Coast, and I'm exposed to the industries that we have here. But I hadn't been exposed to the industries wider than that. So I learned a few things, and I wanted to pass some of those to you today. They're listed on my whiteboard. So what I learned was that doing the SPC 5.1 was amazing because it really exposed me to what I'm curious about, which is how we can apply things at scale in other areas. It also got me very curious about where are the other industries that I can apply this. So in Australia, in a nutshell, for those that are here from Australia, where I've noticed SAFe is, or Scaled Agile or large executions of Agile, is in a number of industries. The industries that I've worked in are federal government, state government, higher education, and finance, and insurance. So they're always areas that I've seen Scaled Agile moving around. What I discovered in my little adventure of 3 or 4 months off was that there's all these other industries that use it. They include large retailers, gambling, weapons and defense, and some other small areas I wasn't expecting to see it, and some other big ones, mining. How are they using it? I also found really interesting. My background is in legacy systems and the digitization and upgrade of systems, and that's kind of where I've been, but they're using it in all sorts of ways. Some of the ways that I saw was there was a SAFe execution happening somewhere that was, now maybe you can help me with language. What's the name of something where you merge an organization, like mergers and acquisition, you merge several organizations? They were doing a demerger using Scaled Agile, and I found that fascinating. And my brain just went, oh, that's really interesting. How on earth do you arrange that train? So that was really cool. There's also lots of different approaches that I wasn't expecting. So big things like CRMs and legacy systems was a big one, and a number of others that I was surprised at how creative that they could get with the actual use of Scaled Agile. So then I went to the next level, and I was thinking, all right, so how do I connect with these other executions that are happening around the world? And I came across Summit, and I thought, oh, there you go. I might check in and have a look at that. So I joined the Summit, which had about, how many people was it, Rob? Was it, I think overall maybe
about 300 in APAC and about 1,200 globally.
Yeah. And the way that it was run was I would say in parallel. So you could basically jump in at any point and you could access the different area. People were there at all sorts of times, which was really useful over a week. And what I was then exposed to were some multinationals and different things that were happening. One of the things that I found most interesting out of all of them was taking up that telco example. There was a Dutch telco that was at Summit, and the scale really blew my mind as far as they had 242 mobile users. They had 242 million, 27 million fixed network lines, 22 million broadband lines, and they were launching 130 arts in less than 3 years. I just thought that was like, wow. And the actual session talked about their learnings and what they had gone through. And what really surprised me about that was that they were similar to everywhere that I'd seen. And I can see a question. And they were similar to what had already happened in other organizations that I'd seen. So things like systemic change, lack of alignment, but they also talked about what happens when, as a practitioner, you don't look at an area for a while and then your eyes go somewhere else. It sort of freezes over and you come back and the leadership's change and things like that. So that was really cool. The second biggest interesting presentation that I heard, and when I first met Rob, I said to him, Rob, you had me at Porsche, because Porsche were presenting, and they had two people from different areas. One was from a sort of a research and design area, and one was from tech. And this just blew me away, that Porsche could use agile ways of working to improve their product. And what really got me curious about that was that there were two different types of traditionalists. There was the one person that was the tech lead, or the tech head of tech, and he was a traditionalist as far as agile ways of working, but also like technology over decades. And the other person, who was the head of research and design, was passionate about the history and the tooling of the vehicles and the way that like the beauty of Porsche and the way that it drives. And I just found that this combination that they'd come to was really fascinating. And he used the term, which I really liked, driver centricity. And I loved that, like the driver and what it actually feels like in a Porsche. Yeah, some other learnings around Porsche were they had moved, like their customer their how could you say, their perspective on the importance of customer had changed over the years. And one of the ways that had changed was that their customer had changed, in that we as customers, I would love to be a customer in Porsche, are getting younger. That was one thing. And that meant that they're more tech, they're more keen on tech. They also talked about a car in their session taking sort of 2 to 4 years to be completed from the tooling perspective, but then the actual, when we get the car, we as a customer have an expectation that we keep getting a software update. So that was really handy, and I just thought that was amazing. Yeah, what also was interesting was the difference that I learned between companies in Europe and the same company in Australia with some of those multinationals, because we do have Volkswagen Group here in Australia, but I found that personally, just from a perspective of a practitioner, was that I felt that Australia was a little behind the times, and perhaps, yeah, we've got some catching up to do. So it was really inspiring and definitely sparked my curiosity about how Porsche used agile ways of working, and that combination between the old and the new. They also discussed the bridge, which I really loved, and I'll call that out as a theme. There was discussion amongst all of the people that presented at Summit around the bridge between different paces of working. So we have the slower moving parts of an organization and the faster moving parts. And about, as a practitioner, how do we find that balance between? Yeah, so they were my two ones that I've really enjoyed. What was also really useful around Summit was that it wasn't just the leaders of the organizations that were speaking on the Agile transformation, it was around the practitioners themselves. So people like you and I, and actually on the ground, what happened, and then the education around different tools and packs and ways to use the Scaled Agile community and the SAFe community to bring those parts in. Yeah. So maybe what I'll do now is I'll just talk a little bit around what I've noticed in market conditions in Australia, and then some of maybe the pain points that I felt being a working practitioner here. And then I might do a little demo of what you can see in the SAFe Summit. So market conditions have been really interesting. And I think it changes for each of us. And I guess what's relevant to me is I'm an independent contractor. However, the market conditions impact what we have in Australia. So we often have full-timers on the ground. We have consultants, so they are from agencies, and we have independent contractors, and they're the three big ones. And our market conditions have changed a lot in the last 2 years. And I'm sure this is happening around the world, but I'm really noticing it now, November, December this year. So if we look at a timeline, in April last year, we all plunged into lockdown, and the leaders of our organizations came to a realization. And the realization is that we need to change the way that we're doing things. And we're going to do that by moving to agile ways of working or delivering different products in a different way. And we're going to do it quickly. So then last year, the market requirements started to build, and we could see that coming. It was increasing. It was one of those industries that expanded and grew through COVID, and I think no one would deny that. Then what started to happen was the lockdowns in Australia. So what we have are we have states, and some of those states lock down and their borders are super tight. So we can't actually move across our country. And prior to COVID, we had lots of flexibility where we can move in and out of our states, and we can work in different states. So a lot of us would fly up and down the East Coast over to Perth, ACT, wherever, and that was what was happening. So we flipped, and we were no longer able to do that as restrictions, and still in some states we can't do that. And that changed the conditions again. So this year, I noticed in around February, March, the heat really started to get on for when people were being hired into organizations. And what tended to happen was in some industries that they would have someone in, they would make an agreement, yep, we'll hire you, come on in. And then even before they could start, they'd had another offer trumped. And that's because of a few reasons. I think market conditions, so borders closing, skill shortage. So there's not that many, or there's lots, but at that time, it's coming along now, there wasn't that many Agile practitioners and a bunch of other, like every kind of member of an Agile team, and that experience, and there was a skills shortage in Australia, and that's absolutely still there. At the same time, these organizations have committed to delivering these things on time. So everything started to change. The agencies and their needs as far as who comes in as consultants and then which consultants go where, that the heat was on there. And when there's a skills shortage, that impacts everything. So it impacts the quality, it impacts organizational health and all sorts of things. It's really damaging, I believe. And then we also have the contractors. So contractors are pretty, you know, I feel like market's great. No complaints. That's just me. And then lastly, we have the FTEs and the full-timers and the people, the employees of these organizations. And I feel that has been the biggest carnage. And I say that because I'm invested in the cultural development of these organizations and in the health of our individuals. And I've felt that has been the hardest for people. And what you're seeing as a result of that carnage is really unhappy people, not because even of the work, but because of the culture and the pressures and the leaderships. There's a little bit of loose cannon kind of happening, and people going, oh, what are we going to do next? So those sorts of things have really impacted the people on the ground, and I think that's actually a problem. So you're seeing, as a result of that occurring, attrition is dropping. People aren't able to hold on to their FTEs, even if they can get them in the door in the first place, because there's a skill shortage in the market, and those sorts of things. So my theme that I'm seeing, which will flow on from that, is that attrition piece. That is the biggest one, yeah. And then you'll hear in the newspapers things like, I read Financial Review a couple of days ago. So Deloitte are now saying, and they're one of the larger agencies, that they can live anywhere you like in the world for 3 or 4 months. And that, I think, is an indicator that, okay, there's lots of things happening here. There's been other points as well that have come up. I saw also in one of the main tabloids in the last few weeks, a piece around the importance of investing in capability and what that means. And that's where things like accreditations come in. And there's an opportunity there across multiple frameworks in Agile to invest back into the people. Yeah, I'll do a little walkthrough of the Summit platform, and then we can do a little collab on what you think is coming. Mihail, would you mind sharing that for me?
Here we go.
Thank you.
Whoops, sorry.
That's okay.
2 seconds. I was trying to find a couple of folks online.
Feel free to post your LinkedIn profile name in the chat box if you would like us to connect with you on LinkedIn. Otherwise, no pressure. Okay, so this is just the summit platform. So it's an annual event. And if you have a look, Mihail, if you just scroll down to the two hands shaking on the left-hand side of the bar. So on the panel that's dark blue on the left, yeah. So there's two hands shaking. Oh, that's not the one, sorry, maybe two up. Yeah, that one. And one more up, the hat, let's go to the hat. Thank you. So here you can see one of the cool things that was at Summit, and I've absolutely utilized this, was they have every single session was recorded, and they've had it basically like on demand, like a Netflix, just jump in whenever you like, and it's been amazing. Yeah, it's almost like listening to a podcast. Something complex like the Dutch telco, yeah, it's quite inspiring. There's a lot in there. It also, I think, thank you, Mihail, that's fine. It also has the networking sessions and some of the facilitator sessions that happen. And yeah, the wonderful benefits of that are the caliber of practitioner and the guidance that you can get there was really amazing. You're welcome to stop sharing that now, Mihail, if you like. Thank you. So, question for the audience. If you're, whether you're in Australia or around the world, if you are around the world, maybe just put your location at the beginning, but in the chat box, can you call out any trends that you see coming in Agile settings in the next 12 months? So crystal ball, if we were to look ahead in 12 months time, what do you think it might look like in our Agile settings that we work in? What do you think might be the theme? And I'll invite somebody to jump in and speak. Mark, did you want to go first? Mark from Perth.
I'm very new into SAFe, about a couple of months. Been doing quite a bit of research, and in fact presented a couple of weeks ago to the company about SAFe. And I just wish I'd known about it back in 2006. I was implementing $1 billion ERP into Telstra, and I can see how this would have fitted quite well. And in fact, I developed a framework which, unbeknown to myself, reflected quite a lot like this. So that's why I've been quite keen to learn more. And in fact, I'm watching this from the hospital bed because I was that keen to find out what was happening.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us, especially from a hospital bed. That's I feel humbled and thank you. And feel free to reach out afterwards if you'd like to talk more about. I'd be really curious to know about that framework that you developed.
One of the biggest things that I've seen over the years, I've been in tech for 30 years, is that a lot of people use the word agile, and it usually is more fragile than agile. And they don't really understand it. But when I saw SAFe and how it was structured and worked, I can see how within governments and state government, local government, how it could be adopted fairly easily, and there would be less resistance because there are identifiable roles within traditional models that could be seen within this model that people can then easily more adapt to. So I'm quite excited about the opportunities.
Very wise. Yes. Thank you. Is there somebody that would like to call out? I can see there's 60 new messages in the chat. I'm going to scroll right to the bottom.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions at the end, so.
Okay.
You want me to read them out for you?
Do we want to just have a quick chat around what's happening? So Keith, you've written New Zealand total remote trains. And we've got Sandeep, SAFe implementation led by business and not IT, especially lean portfolio management. Erica, we've got better prioritization at every level of the orgs, I would assume. Did anybody want to call out any others? Okay. All right, Mahal, questions. So we had, did you want to read them out?
Yep. So we have one question from Jubin. He was asking for, I think it was focused on hardware-focused arts, and I think Alison provided some info there, so they'll catch up. So he was after, yeah. So that was kind of the key thing. Jubin,
Yep,
would you like to repeat the question?
I can read that. So Jubin's asked, can you please share examples of using Scaled Agile, Sprint Cadence, PI planning cadence for hardware defense? How it has been executed, of course, no confidential info. So I won't ever give any confidential info, but Jubin, what my understanding is, so I've listened to, there was a representative from Defence, which was fascinating at Summit. And I think they're Hawaii based. And they talked about running, what was it, like certain systems upgrades through their weapons systems. And there are specific parts of that, which I'm happy to circulate, maybe I'll check, but it's publicly available on the Summit board. But yeah, both those places, and there's one in Australia, there's Defence here, use parts of Defence, including multinationals that are using Scaled Agile in the development of things like vessels. And they use Scaled Agile just the way any organisation would. So Sprint Cadence, PI planning cadence, it's just basically how they choose to chunk it down, arranging by value, what's the most important thing based on strategy. So really similar to how you would traditionally see it.
Sure. So here are the specifics. Say, for example, they have something to manufacture, say 6 months down the line, it's just as an example, say a new drone. But how do they plan out their sprint cadence? Like what's expected for each sprint? Or if I just scale it to a plane as an example, right? Defense, or an electric car. Now in the US, GM and like Ford are all going all electric and they have a lot of demand, right? So how would the sprint cadence work as an example for delivery or testing? So I was just curious to know if you had any specific examples to share.
I can't deep dive that far as what their unique sprint cadence would look like. I could tell you exactly what it would look like in a SAFe rollout. So organising by value, running in a PI in a quarter, sprints every 2 weeks. So stuff that you would already know. And I can share some information around that too. What other questions do we have to hear?
We have one from Erica about
can you
hear more participatory budgeting examples?
I love that question, and I have that same question. So Erica says, I'm keen to hear more about participatory budgeting and who is using it in real life. So basically, participatory budgeting in SAFe comes from an economic principle, and SAFe 5 onwards, very economics based, and it's about empowering, in my words, parts of the organisation to choose how they want to spend the money collectively. So, for example, here in a standard organisation, you might get a whole pool of money and saying you need to spend it this way, and then it's handed to the leaders like, there you go and spend it. So the reverse sort of happens, and it comes from a country, for example, Bhutan. They're very progressive in lots of ways, but they use participatory budgeting. So instead what happens is they say, here's the pool of money, here you go, leaders. Now let's have a collaborative discussion on how you want to spend it. And then it's basically like a little prioritization session, but really robust on how that might work. And who's using it? So I also was like, oh, this is great. Who's using it? Couldn't find anyone in Australia. But when I was looking, it was just after that 5.1 release, right? So not that many people would know about it. So I just had like, no idea what you're talking about, nah. But then I started asking, I was like, where are they maybe a bit more progressive? California. So I asked a few SPCs in California, and then I started to get some info. I'm not plugging it, but there is on my LinkedIn, there's an article about participatory budgeting. I swear I didn't plant Erica there, but I talk about how they use it in finance, or how it's failed in some ways and not in others. So you're welcome to check that one out.
Thanks, Kristy. The reason I was asking is I'm in the middle of delivering LPM training, and tomorrow we're getting into participatory budgeting. So I was wondering if anyone was actually using it in real life, because in New Zealand, I don't think anyone is. So please, other Kiwis on the line, let me know if you are. So no one that you know of in Aussie was just keen to bring some real life examples to the table.
I can connect you with a few people in New Zealand that would know about it, that I know of. But yeah, as far as who's using it, does anybody here use participatory budgeting?
Yeah, we're using it more within a global context. So we've got different regions around the world for the company I work for, but the global people are actually using it. And we do it as a bit of a Dragon's Den type session, or Shark Tank. So we have the epic owners get up there, present their epics, really try and sell it. And then the people play with virtual monopoly money to assign the money and the budgets.
That's cool. Thank you.
It is cool. There's also some researchers that have developed some case studies around it. I think one of them lives in Western Australia, and her link is in that LinkedIn thing too. But there's a lot of research. Yeah, maybe you two could connect and chat around how you're using it. The last person that was just on the screen. Are there any other questions?
Tons of questions. So Ruma wants to hear about lean portfolio management. How and where did they start? An example and learnings from the experience. So transitioning to lean portfolio management.
Was there a specific organization he was asking about, or industry?
Ruma?
Thanks, Mihal. Hi, Kristy. No, nothing specific. I was just keen to know if there are multiple funding pathways, or for example, very generically speaking, if the organization is very far from lean portfolio management or participatory budgeting, where did they start? How did they start? And what were the learnings along the way? How long did it take for the transition? What were the challenges? Any basic information around that?
Cool. I might open that up to the floor. So Ruma is asking around lean portfolio management. How does an organization, where do they start? How do they get there? And what do they do next? Are there any good examples?
Yeah, I might chip in there. We have an internal one from DXC. In addition to services that we provide and integration, we actually have internal software development. And within one particular vertical, after many acquisitions, we had a bunch of companies around the world that were pretty much stovepipes, everyone vertical. So the way that happened, it was one lady in particular that sat down with the executive, and over a period of a year or so, I actually first convinced him that it's a good idea to get there, because without the executive support, you won't do anything. And if you talk to majority of the experienced SAFe practitioners, they will tell you the same. If you get the executives to support and to start applying it. So the first step after that was getting him, the executive, and his team on LPM training. So luckily she invited me and I helped out with the training. But it was interesting to see that pretty much with the training, and it was interesting because it's not a public class but rather internal. So Ruma, you probably will be doing the same. To see initially how they kind of just tried to do everything during the class, and then after 2 days we decided no, hang on, the class can't cover all the work that you have to do after the class. So all the exercises were basically just start the exercise and put something on a backlog, and the backlog was really long at the end of the days. But it was it's exactly, if I say how do you get there, find an executive who is brave enough to give it a go and support it. That's your step number one. Everything else would flow after that. So
thanks, Mihal.
Is there any other questions? Mahal, can you see? I
yes.
Can't scroll fast enough.
From Mark and Celiers, keen on understanding SPC and what is achieved on the training.
Okay. I just put my LinkedIn in there. If anyone needs to reach out, they can. So SPC 5.1, it's about a 4 or 5 day course now. So you'll hear, for those that aren't familiar with SAFe, there's different levels. So you might see someone might have it's an accreditation, but 4.2 or 4, 5s. So 5.2, I think we're up to, or 5.1 somewhere, is the latest release. What's achieved? It walks you through the SA certification, which is Scaled Agilist, I think it is. And that's basically an introduction to SAFe, which is really useful for anybody in what that looks like. And as I said, like I'm really interested in models and frameworks, and I work in a number, and I see SAFe in general, those accreditations, as part of my toolkit. And I am definitely an agnostic. However, I do love it because it's structured and it really makes sense at scale. So with to answer your question, SPC, so what you get is you'll do two days, which basically walks you through the same content that an SA is. And the final 2 days are a lot to do with lean portfolio management and a couple of the things that happen from more of a program view. So the P stands for program. Yeah, it does. So program level. So it's meant to help empower you as a professional to provide guidance and leadership at a program level. So you may, if you're an SA, you may be used to working on a team level. If you want to work with multiple teams or more with the leadership group, there's parts of that accreditation that will teach you the best way to do that from a SAFe perspective. So that hopefully that gives you an understanding. Yeah. Perfect. I feel like we've run out of time, but I'm easy.
Yes, so we have another couple of minutes. Okay. And just a couple more questions. So Alison is interested in seeing orgs turning to SAFe when they're selling of a portion of their business. Any case studies of that?
That's interesting.
So sounds like a demerger. Or
yeah, demerger.
Selling part of the org. Yeah.
Okay, so the example that I know of that is in Australia. How can I frame it in a way? Maybe I'll reach out to you individually if that's okay.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank
Next one is from Dinesh asking what are the prospects of RTSs here in Australia? Could you recommend? And I think Rob answered that. So get in touch with Rob if you need that info. And probably we have just one more really hairy question from Carmi. Has anyone used comparable metrics between their SAFe and waterfall projects to convince any skeptical senior leaders of the benefits of going SAFe? We are finding that difficult as we tend to measure different things between the two methodologies. So difficult to compare apples with oranges.
Oh, I love it. I love metrics.
It is a tough one.
But you know what? Let's just start with where we're at. So with the metrics, comparatively waterfall, I don't know if I can help you with waterfall, maybe someone else can. As far as metrics that I use to convince leaders that either my work is effective or where they need to go or what my view is I love that the SAFe Maturity Assessment Questionnaire. And it's called a self-assessment tool. It's on a community platform. And it's this really old Excel sheet related thing. But basically what it is it has 4 areas. It's got ceremonies, backlog, artifacts, and roles, I think it is. And it's got 5 or 6 questions. And each question you take as a coach to a Scrum Master or someone on your teams, and you basically get, hey, yes or no, what's this? And then each area you start to get, this is where they're at with this in backlog, and this is where they're at in ceremonies. And that's a good point. Other than that, at the end, you'll get a program view. So that's kind of the first half. Does anybody have any waterfall examples of data that they can compare to Agile data? I don't know if we'd have any waterfall people in the room.
I guess one thing that comes to my mind is the quality of the product that you're delivering. is always something that is consistent regardless of what method frameworks that you're using. So making sure that you have your eye on that is important. Another thing that I would say around metrics is that metrics have a funny effect of how they make people behave. So make sure you're doing a couple of things when it comes to metrics. You have a counter metric there for any metric that you have. So for example, you're saying number of releases needs to be increased. Yeah, you wanna measure that, but you wanna also measure at the same time that the quality of the product is not going down. So make sure you balance the metrics so that you don't see negative effect in the system. The second thing that I want to say with the metrics was trend. Trend is your friend, not the point data, the trend.
Thank you so much, Nafis. It's so nice to see you. So many familiar faces. I miss you guys so much. Thank you for that. And so accurate too on product quality. So you could look for what are metrics of product quality that already exists, and that would make a bit lighter work. And just that basic thing, right? Is it fit for purpose when it comes out? If it's waterfall, is it fit for purpose? If not, have you met the requirements anyway? So there's just that kind of black and white, those black and white parts too. Other questions, or should we wrap up?
I think we need to wrap up, guys. We're almost there. So first of all, thanks so much, Kristy, for volunteering to share your experience. It's always really, really tough. And it's also, I would like to say, invite everyone else who would like to share their experience or knowledge or any other topic of about SAFe. As you can see, the biggest value is when practitioners basically share. Everything else you can read, but how people went about something, and that's the main thing. So Kristy, thank you so much. And Rob, thank you again for finding us good speakers and sharing the information from the region. So unless there's any last minute, Rob,
sorry,
Kristy?
I just jumped at the last minute. Is this going to be recorded? Can you put send the link to?
Correct. It will be. I'm just building a YouTube channel, and I'll post it on both the Sydney SAFe meetup and the other one, SAFe Around the World
That
meetup.
would be
So
fantastic,
definitely.
mate. Somehow, when I imported the calendar thing, the days just mess up. So,
Oh yes, yes. Unfortunately, I'm on a Mac as well, and calendars don't pop up at the right time. So
so glad I know they
and
are really keen
yeah,
to get. I'm very looking forward to get
absolutely,
that
absolutely. So yeah, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, both to Kristy and myself, and I can post the actual recording. And once just a note, initially the actual URL is kind of garbled, so we'll need 100 people to subscribe, and we'll have then the right URL, so it's easy to remember. But yes, definitely. Thanks so much for that. Okay, so again, thanks to all of you guys for attending, and especially for the wonderful questions and the discussion. So until next time, take care. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Bye.